In this video, we will cover how to work with the Google Analytics components available in the KingswaySoft SSIS integration toolkit. These components allow us to connect to Google Analytics directly from an SSIS package and retrieve analytics report data through the Google Analytics source component. We will begin by creating a Google Analytics connection manager, which stores the connection and authentication details that will be used by the component. Then, we will configure the Google Analytics source to retrieve report data from Google Analytics and pass it through the data flow. We can first create a new Google Analytics Connection Manager by right-clicking in the Connection Managers window and selecting New Connection. From the list, we can select Google Analytics to add our new connection into the package. The first page, General, contains the main connection details needed to set up the connection. Under API, we can choose which Google Analytics API we want to connect to. The Connection Manager includes options for both the legacy Google Analytics Reporting API and the Google Analytics Data API. Since the Reporting API is deprecated, we will focus on the Google Analytics Data API in this video. After selecting Google Analytics Data API, we can provide the property identifier, which identifies the Google Analytics property that we want to connect to. Next, under Authentication mode, we can select from one of the available modes. The first option is Authorization code, which involves working with an existing token if one was already created, or generating a new token using the Generate Token File button. For an existing token, we would be able to select the token file path using the ellipsis and provide the token file password. Once we reach the OAuth configuration and sign-in window, we would first need to select the app type. The KingswaySoft app can be used for quick testing, while My Own app allows us to provide the details from our own Google Cloud application and is recommended for production use. Before entering those details, let's quickly look at where they come from in Google Cloud Console. First, let's make sure we are in the correct Google Cloud project. Under APIs and Services, we can open the API library and confirm that the Google Analytics Data API is enabled. Then we can go to the Credentials page and create or open the OAuth client that will be used for this connection. From the OAuth client configuration, we can retrieve the client ID and client secret. The redirect URL depends on the application type selected for the OAuth client. If we create a desktop app client, Google uses a local redirect URL, typically a loopback address, such as localhost, and the console does not expose any redirect URL settings for that client type. If we create a web application client, we can configure the value under Authorized Redirect URLs. These values can then be copied back into the My Own app section of the token generation window. For a more detailed walkthrough of the Google OAuth setup, including the project, API enablement, and OAuth client creation, we have linked a related blog post in the description. Heading back to Visual Studio, in the OAuth configuration and sign-in window, the scope is provided by default, but this is an editable field that can be adjusted if required. If the Use Default Browser to Sign In option is enabled, the sign-in process will open in the default browser on the machine. When unchecked, the authentication process will be completed inside the toolkit. Once the app details are entered, we can select Sign In and Authorize to begin the Google authorization process. We will be prompted to sign in to the Google account and grant the requested access. If the sign-in is completed using the default browser, the browser redirects to the configured redirect URL with the authorization information appended to it. In this example, the redirect URL is a local host address. We can copy the full URL from the browser, paste it into the redirect URL field in the component, and then select OK to continue. After authorization is complete, we can set a password for the token file and save it to a file location. Back on the General page of the Connection Manager, the token file details will be shown for the newly generated token. The second authentication mode is Service Account for server-to-server authentication. In this mode, there are two key file types we can select, JSON or P12. If JSON is selected, we can provide the path to the JSON key file. Once the file is selected, the service account and client ID details will be populated. JSON is generally the preferred key file type for service account authentication, while P12 is also available if required. If P12 is selected, we would need to provide the service account. The certificate location can be set to Store, which is recommended, or File System. If Store is selected, the certificate thumbprint can be entered manually or selected using the certificate chooser. If File System is selected, the path to the certificate can be provided. The certificate password would also be entered here. In the second page, Advanced Settings, we can enter Proxy and Miscellaneous Settings. The proxy server setting is set to No Proxy by default, but we may manually enter the proxy server address, username, and password as required, or use Auto Detect if working with a system-configured proxy. The timeout in seconds can be provided to specify how long to wait before a connection timeout occurs. By default, this is set to 2 minutes. A value of 0 would indicate no timeout. API throttling allows us to restrict how many requests we want to send to the Google Analytics service per unit of time. A throttling rate can be set that corresponds to how many requests are sent per second, minute, or hour. The Retry on Intermittent Errors option, when enabled, can help recover from possible intermittent service disruptions. This is helpful as it can prevent the integration process from stopping due to certain temporary service-related issues. The service call would be retried up to 3 times in determined intervals. When we have configured our connection manager, the Test Connection button can be used to see if a successful connection has been made to the service. Pressing OK saves the current configuration and closes the Connection Manager window. After the Connection Manager has been created, we can use it within our Google Analytics source component to read data from Google Analytics. In the SSIS toolbox, we can drag and drop the Google Analytics source into our data flow window. Then, we can double-click to open the editor. In the General page, the first thing we need to do is select our existing Google Analytics Connection Manager. After selecting the connection, we can choose the report type that we want to use. The first report type is Google Analytics Data API Report. This allows us to retrieve standard report data from Google Analytics. We can begin by adding 1 or more date ranges. When we select Add, we can choose the start date and end date for the report. These can be set using options such as today, yesterday, beginning of current week, beginning of current month, beginning of current year, or a custom date. Next, we can select the metrics and dimensions for the report. The metrics field is a multi-select dropdown where we can choose 1 or more numeric values that we want to retrieve, such as active users or other available metrics. The dimensions field is also a multi-select dropdown. Dimensions allow us to define how the metrics should be grouped, such as by country, page path, device category, or another available dimension. Once metrics and dimensions are selected, those selected fields become available in the Order By grid. From here, we can add 1 or more sort rules and choose which metric or dimension should be used for ordering. The direction can be set to ascending or descending. When ordering by a dimension, the dimension order type can also be selected. This controls how dimension values are sorted, such as alphanumeric, case-insensitive alphanumeric, or numeric ordering. Pivot and pivot selections are also available for pivot-style report configurations. The page size option lets us specify how many records should be retrieved at a time. Include empty rows can be enabled if we want rows with empty or 0 metric values to be included in the results. The currency code fields can be used when the selected report data requires a specific currency. The source component also supports Google Analytics Data API Real-Time Report. When this report type is selected, we can still choose the metrics and dimensions we want to retrieve, configure sorting in the Order By grid, and set the page size. Instead of date ranges, the real-time report uses minute ranges. Here, we can add a range, provide a name, and specify the start and end minutes ago. This allows us to define the recent time window that should be used for the real-time data request. Over in the Columns page, this section displays all available output columns based on the selected metrics and dimensions. We can select or deselect any columns we would like to include or ignore. The Hide Selected and Hide Unselected options help narrow the column list, and the filter box makes it easier to locate a specific column. When a column is selected, its properties can be viewed on the right side, including details such as the name, data type, length, precision, scale, and code page. The metric filter page can be used to filter report results based on metric values. In Condition Builder mode, we can add filter conditions by selecting a metric, choosing an operator, and providing either a static value or a variable. As conditions are configured, the filter query is generated in the query window below. The dimension filter page works similarly, but applies filtering based on dimension values instead. This can be helpful when we only want to retrieve data for certain dimension values, such as a specific page path, campaign, country, or other selected dimension. For both the metric filter and dimension filter pages, custom query mode can be used if we want to freely edit the query text. This can be helpful for more advanced filter logic that may not be fully supported in the condition builder. When switching to custom query mode, the component will display a prompt explaining that input values are text merged at runtime, and that switching back to condition builder mode will lose any customizations made to the query. For data API reports, the cohort spec page is also available when creating a cohort report. When Create Cohort Report is enabled, the component will remove the date range settings from the general page, since the cohort configuration will define the cohort report details instead. In the cohorts grid, we can add the cohort name, dimension, date range name, start date, and end date. The cohorts range granularity option allows us to select daily, weekly, or monthly granularity. We can also specify the cohort range start and end offsets, and enable accumulate if the cohort values should be accumulated across the range. At the bottom of the editor, the Refresh Component button can be used to refresh the component metadata based on the current configuration. Visible for all pages, the FX icon allows us to dynamically set expressions for available properties in the component. The documentation icon can be used to generate metadata information on how the component is currently configured, including the available columns and their data types. When we are finished with our configuration, we can click OK to save the component. Finally, the Google Analytics source output can be connected to a destination component in the data flow window. For example, we can connect it to a dummy destination to view the available output columns and confirm how the selected metrics and dimensions will flow through the package. We hope this video has been helpful in your understanding of how to configure the Google Analytics Connection Manager and Google Analytics Source component. KingswaySoft, data integration made easy.